As we're here tonight on Wivelman Hill Monday Night Meetup, I am so glad to be here with you tonight. Again, this is Erica Bishop. As we're talking about our children being prepared for school, how do we get them ready emotionally? So, as we know, the latter part of the year, school year was very different. We got out of school early due to the pandemic and COVID-19, and in many different areas, our children are not back at school yet. And how do we prepare for them for this new life? And many of them were probably getting ready to be promoted to another grade, going from middle school to high school, going from um, elementary school to middle school. Even for those that were getting prepared to go to college, many of them may not have even had the opportunity to go back to school. So we're going to talk about some different things that we can do to prepare them emotionally. We're going to try to hit all the different ages, and I know our small babies are the ones who are probably going through most of the changes, the ones that have a lot of energy, and we want to make sure that we're giving them what they need. And also the parents, for those that are homeschooling or who may not necessarily have an opportunity to homeschool. You're still working in an essential worker. What does that look like? How do we do that? So we're going to talk about those couple of things this evening, and please ask any questions that you have in the chat. I'm trying to answer them as best that I can, but as I was getting prepared for this tonight, I was thinking about a couple of different things from the aspect of emotional intelligence and our children having that degree of self-awareness. And this is a great opportunity to teach them, for them to begin to understand who they are and their self-awareness and how their emotions are coming across, because at this point, our emotions have probably been all over the place for all the different changes, the last minute changes, thinking we're going to go back to school and not, worrying about uh, the situations, the circumstances, the conditions, wearing masks. Do we have enough of what we need? And even the household itself having to shift and to change. So a couple of things that I wanted to just kind of share with you um, to help, because I have adult children, but I can't call them children. I have adults. I have a 20-year-old and a 21-year-old. My son is in his third year of college, and my daughter is in her second. Now, she's in a technical school, so she was already commuting. The only difference that she has had is that she is online um, now, and I think maybe one day a week she may have to go to class. Now, my son was in a completely different city, and he's not going back at all. And as a matter of fact, even for his internship for school, he had to do it virtually because he was supposed to have been up north. And of course, they had to do it virtually. So he's been in the house the entire summer. So just to kind of share some of the things that they have done and maybe some things that we can do together to help our children. So I have a few notes here, and I'm going to kind of read off of my notes to make sure that we hit a couple of these things. As we talk about our school age children, and they've kind of maybe even had their own schedule, if we didn't keep a regular schedule for them throughout the summer, and now they're getting ready to go back to school, now it's time to create a schedule. So when we think about our children getting emotionally prepared for school, insert them in the schedule for the day so that they can know and understand what the schedule is going to look like, what time the school begin, and what time the school end. So as we allow them to insert themselves and say, well, what do you think is we're going to have to start school between this time and this time. So we're going to have to give them parameters, because if we tell them to just choose whatever time, they may not start till noon, and that's not what we want to do. We want to keep them on a good schedule and get them back into a good routine. So it may see, do you want to start school at 7 or do you want to start school at 8? Give them the choice. You within this window, you can start school at this time or this time. And as you break out the schedule, Where do we want to insert lunch? Where do we want to insert breaks? And how much time with that? So I wouldn't say give them a blank canvas, but give them choices within the schedule that they need. Now, understanding that as we're making these choices and we're making this schedule, parents that are homeschooling, you've got to have downtime as well. You just as a teacher would have what they call class study time, or being in the I forgot the name of it. When I was in the school system and teaching, there was a room that they were able to go to, and they would just have some downtime. And you have to plan that as well for yourself when you're making this schedule. And this is where, family members can help with this process, as we do have family members or parenting, depending upon what time one parent gets home and the other time another parent gets home, or if you've got different ages of children, how we can break out the schedule so that each person can get the necessary break that they need. Let's talk about study space. And this is so important for children, because as they have their study space, they need to have their creative spaces that that would allow them to not feel as though they're in the same place the entire time. So we know they can't necessarily change classes, but they may have a study zone when we're talking about science, and a study zone when we're talking about math, or maybe it's different billboards or something that they can decorate, that when it's time to go to a different subject, we put up that new poster board that they may have decorated to help them switch to the different places that they have. One of the other things that we can set is when we're talking about goals for the children and helping them to set goals for themselves when it comes to when we finish this particular subject, then we'll take a quiz. And after we take a quiz, to maybe decide on some of the rewards they would receive after that, or a star system that they can make up as doing that. And what this does is helps put the children into problem solving skills and helping their decision making skills. And when we also insert them in this, they're also learning consequences to the decisions that they're making, because they're helping to make those decisions. In my book, Master Your Emotions, Master Your Life, on page 38 through page 40, I have a couple of diagrams in there. And this first one is called the word wheel. And the word wheel is very important, because sometimes we limit our vocabulary with the children, and we need to help them to understand how to express themselves with different words, and how to change their perception or see things in a different way. So one of the other ones that I have here on page 39 is in helping them with the feelings chart. I'm not sure if you can see that real well, but this is a feelings chart, and this feelings chart is broken down to intensity level, being strong, mild, and weak in the words that we're choosing, and to help them to understand the words they're choosing. So when we're talking about their emotions and decisions that they're making, how do we help them to understand what it means in happy, sad, angry, scared, or confused? So as we're going about our day, it would be good if we could probably take maybe at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, one of the things that we can do, or different parts of the day, you can also use, and this is another part on page 40, this is an emotions chart. And what this emotions chart has is different emotions to help them to understand how they're feeling, because school now is different for everybody. And sometimes we may even need to use the emotion charts for ourselves as parents. But school now is different for everybody. And to make sure that we're giving them what they need so that they can learn in the best way that they can, and they may be getting frustrated, Technology might not necessarily be working right. How do we deal with these different things to help them to understand we're going through a process of change, don't know how it's going to last, don't know how long it's going to last. It's very different from what you normally experience, but we need to tap into their emotions to help them to understand, how can I express myself? So as we're creating these study spaces, and when we think about maybe the reading zones, I don't know if you remember, I know when I was in school, we had little spaces with the bean bags, and everybody wanted to sit on the bean bag, and that was our quiet space. And I know that when my children were a little bit, when my adults were a little bit younger, I had a prayer room, or my office room was a space where it was to be quiet. That was your quiet space. So maybe it's one little corner that can be separated with maybe a rug or a different color, or pillows of a different color, to show that this is the quiet space, so that they can have that downtime. Or when you get in this space, everybody has to how long can we be quiet, or this is the reading room, or this is the meditation area. How can we use those different spaces to help them to process their emotions, to understand how they're feeling, and then we can insert some conversation to say, well, how did your day go? How did it feel when we talked about math? I saw that you were a little bit frustrated. Show me on the emotion chart, you felt like you couldn't get that problem. How did you understand that? Or how was your Zoom for English today? Or how did it work with your teacher? So we want to make sure that we are giving them those avenues that they can express themselves, so that we can, as parents, bring them back in so that they don't tap all the way out. Because we're just at the beginning stages. And again, we don't know how long this is going to last. And we want to make sure that we're giving them those necessary breaks that they need throughout the day. So let's go back to the schedule real quick. So when we're talking about their schedule, and when I was in school, and I don't want to date myself, recess was a real thing, and it was really good to have recess, and being able to give them those small breaks so they can exert some of that energy. And I do have some other resources when I was substitute teaching in the school system, especially when I was in elementary school. There were some great resources that they would use to exercise, to kind of help get that anxious energy out, different channels that you can go to. And I know ETV, I don't know if they're still doing ETV in a lot of areas, that you could actually get an account so that you could have these resources and play them on your own television, and even from reading. So I'll make sure I drop those in the comments, because these are some things that I even use even in the church when I would do different things with the youth, that would allow them to have just different interaction. Because I know there are also some that actually read to the children and have a particular book, and that they can actually read to the children, what kind of gives the parent or whoever homeschooling the children to have some downtime. So we talked about creativity and exercise, making sure you have different places so that they can express their creativity. As much artwork as they can do, music that they can play, different things that they can create, allows them to have that expressive creativity to possibly share their emotions as well. As we're staying connected with our teachers, and I know that I'm not sure how they would do it now as parents, but when you're going to have these virtual conferences, and I know there may be some conferences where the children may be a part of or may not, but that's where that collaboration of working together, as when that child may be working and studying, what is their attention span like, what are some of the different things that we can do to make sure that everything is value added for the student. One of the things is lunch is so important. So maybe it's more than one lunch break. And I know we typically have lunch, depending upon what time you start your day. Maybe it's more than one lunch break. And now that children are home, they're having the opportunity to maybe go out for lunch, or maybe they're participating in fixing their own lunch. And, what does the lunch menu look like for the week? For those of us that may have to food prep to save time and to save money. What does the lunch look like, and how do we food prep in order for them to be involved with that particular decision as well? I know that we're using a lot of electronics, but we also limiting the electronics is very helpful as well, and getting them back to reading and writing is very good. So maybe one day a part of their activity could be poetry day, or a theme to whatever it is they may be doing, to something different to electronics. And when we're talking about, of course, offering rewards, what does that look like? And again, giving them parameters of what those rewards may look like. And also life skills added into the curriculum. And this is very important as well when we're helping them to balance emotionally. How are we teaching them the life skills of every day? So maybe home economics, cleaning your room, refolding the clothes in your drawer, refolding the towels that may be in the linen closet, color coding your shoes, home economics. We talked about fixing the lunch. When we're talking about vacuuming a room and putting up the toys. So there are different things that we can insert from a housekeeping standpoint that can be part of home economics, which is a part of the curriculum. So those are a few things that I wanted to share, and I want to leave it open to any questions that anyone may have as we're rounding out at about 9 o'clock before I go into the next phase. Do we have any questions out there?
There are no specific questions posted right now, Erica, but I wanted to know, I have a high schooler, a freshman in high school, and I have a fifth grader. And so when you were discussing the creating spaces, my ninth grader feels like he has created the right kind of space for himself. And I kind of want him to do more like what you're saying, which is utilize some different space, because he kind of has been in this one space, for the summer, what have you. And based on just what I experienced last year with him, just in the school and everything with home schooling, I want him to kind of have a little bit more structure than being in the room, because he could end up in the bed. And then I can't I can't be running up and down the steps trying to get with him and get with my daughter. So are there any suggestions that you have, and just like encouraging him to, because he's a very emotional person. So he was giving me all the facial expressions and all the huffing and puffing, but just to help him to kind of give him opportunity to make some decisions, but also stand my ground in some areas as well.
So I know we don't want to disrupt the whole house, because I understand space might be limited. I know for me, we actually, because we didn't necessarily eat in a formal dining room a lot. So we kind of turned the dining room kind of into like a mini office space. So not moving a whole lot of furniture around, but just kind of all the important things, just kind of put them up, because we weren't necessarily using them. But that was an added space, because my son was in his room the entire summer. But there are times he would, once I kind of cleared that space, he would come downstairs, be in front of the big picture window, to kind of give him a feeling that he was somewhere else, and kind of created that space where he could kind of look at something different. So it may be a spot in the house, or maybe, and it makes it, maybe a place in the room. I know we get ready to go through the garage and, redo a couple things in there to create some spaces. That may be one. I know my daughter, on the porch, we get ready to create a study space for her. So, because she's the outdoors type, so to kind of give her something different is because if she's in her room, she in the bed. 9 times out of 10, no, make it 10 out of 10, she in the bed.
Yeah.
Ain't gonna work. Ain't no work gonna get done. She in the bed.
Right.
So, and it's creating that outdoor space for her, so that we're putting up the mosquito netting around the porch. Gonna make a bench out of some pallets and put some outdoor seating out there and adding some flowers and, a table. So those are some of the different things. And I have a small office space even in my room. And it's just kind of, okay, well, spend some time in my room. Let me just kind of create a little space and a little nook where they can kind of do something different. So he needs to get out of the room. So what room do you want to be in? Sometimes it has to be, you get this choice or this choice, and let's try to make it for everybody.
Okay.
And it may be time frames. So from this time to this time, you're going to spend it here. And this time to this time, you're going to spend it here. It helps him to make the decision, but it also, you're standing your ground with the parameters that you put out there, and he's involved in kind of what the outcome is going to be.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you. Joanna said that she has an 11th and 12th grader. And she liked what you said too about giving them some choices as far as what room to be in.
Thank you. So we always want this to be a great experience, and even in the fact that they even may be home, some of the things that we would normally do with them leaving or going to school, we still want to keep those same routines. So when we're talking about notes in their lunchbox, or you could put a note on the lunch plate, or checking out books from the library. I know I have a bookcase full of books, and what process does that look like? Just to try to make it creative and fun, and just coming all the way out of the box and the norm. Yes, we may be at home, but what activities can we do maybe outside in the backyard? That may be something different, or creating spaces when it's not, too hot outside, that we can maybe do some of the schoolwork outside in the backyard in the earlier part of the day, and coming in the latter part of the day. Part of the recess time could be walking around the neighborhood. So just in creating those different spaces and reassuring them that if any problems arise, that we're available and there to help them, especially when they're doing the majority of their learning online. What does that look like with the communication with the teacher? Is it possible that you would probably be able to, I can't necessarily say listen in on the classes, but what type of report would you get, or will they be able to share some of the Zoom information to see how the children are doing? And we want to make sure that we encourage that. But one of the things we want to talk about is for some that may be going to school part-time and at home sometimes, not knowing where people are, and hopefully that wearing masks is something that's going to be completely different for the children, especially smaller children where they're used to hugging, used to engaging. And that can be a lot for a child that is typically very outgoing. They have that extroverted personality. So when we talk about emotions and your children's personality type, this is very important as well. The child that's isolated, not necessarily isolated, that's more introverted, we want to make sure that we do put them out in different spaces so they don't pull themselves in to be isolated, because it's very easy, because they're normally introverted. They want to be tucked away in their little corners. But for the child that's very extroverted, and especially when you got two different parameters, you have more than one child in the home, and all their personalities are completely different. You got one that's very extroverted, one that's very introverted, and maybe one in the middle. How do we give them that balance of time so that one doesn't have to repress themselves and the other one don't feel like they've been overtaken? So the sharing corner is very important. Creating that time where each one will have the opportunity to share how they feel based upon the interactions with the people in the home. I regularly do this. I call it Amnesty Day. And this is when I gave my children an opportunity to share raw feelings with guardrails, but they were able to share raw feelings and there was no repercussion at all whatsoever. And that may be something that may be good to insert in your planning maybe once a week. Friday evenings or Thursday night or Saturday morning, once the school week is done, having Amnesty Day. So what they may not have been able to say during the school week, they'll have a moment to get it out and express it, and they're not repressing any emotions and holding that in. Because there can be a lot of anxiety around this process, not only for the children, but also for the parents. There can be a lot of anxiety. So when we are tapping into our children's emotions and behaviors, so if they're unable to necessarily express their emotions, they may be showing in their behaviors, and one of them is a regressive behavior. So one that is easy to see is a child, especially a younger child, who may start bedwetting again. They're holding some emotions in. They've regressed in some of their normal behaviors, and they may be having nightmares, not being able to sleep at all times of the night. Changes in their appetite, and you know that this is their favorite meal or this is their favorite snack, and they decide, I don't want it. Changes in their appetite. Consistently asking, is everything gonna be okay? Are you sure, Mom? Is everything gonna be okay? That child may be experiencing a little bit of worry or concern, or not sure how to express that I'm worried about this, or I'm scared about this, or I'm fearful about this. Trouble focusing. When we're looking at even the short time spans of studying, are they able to focus during that time? And what are the interruptions with that? And even, yes, ma'am.
Sorry, E, I wanted to jump in and ask two questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just asking on behalf of people who may not be able to chime in, but I know people may catch the replay. Do you have any specific advice for parents that cannot be present with their children during the day, and their children are unfortunately caring for themselves? You know, they may be 12, they may be 13, but I noticed that today, being present and being able to help them navigate, you know, my heart went out for children that may not just have that reassurance, or that person that can drive who's not intimidated by technical challenges. Do you have any advice for that family? And then I'll wait till you answer that to ask the next question.
One of the things, if the parent doesn't have the ability to be present because they may be working or whatever it is that may be going on, maybe having a time during the day to check in with them to see how they're doing. I know everybody doesn't have an iPhone, but you also have an app called Google Duo. So if you do have a child that has a device, they can download Google Duo, and it allows you to have FaceTime with that individual. Now, of course, we want to make sure we put restrictions on certain things if we don't want to give out numbers, but that's another way to connect with the child, because sometimes they need to see the parent. Just if I can hear mommy's voice or daddy's voice or see his face, that makes me feel better. So it may be a certain time that to check in, and maybe to find a way to do FaceTime with them and just do an emotional check-in. You know how we do wellness checks? Just to do an emotional check-in with the child if we can, to figure out how they're doing, you know, how's your schedule going, you know, until the parent gets home. And when they do get home, having that engaging space and having that time of just undivided attention. Walk me through your day. How did it go? So they can express themselves, maybe unload some of their emotions, and the parent can kind of dissect and see where they are.
That's really good. Thank you. And I love how you gave some good tips on doing things that we would normally do if they were going off to school. That's something I try to keep in mind, you know, at my home. But when you say that even a parent that has to leave and their child is home, I think that's so awesome. The little notes in the lunch bag or on the snack in the refrigerator or whatever. Those are little things that parents can do, because I shared with you and Tanisha how, yeah, I was overwhelmed with gratitude to be present, but my heart was also thinking about parents that could not be with their children, because I was that child when I was younger, where my mom did what she had to do to provide and sacrifice. So I'm not the silver spoon child and, you know, just complaining about all the little inconveniences. You know, it's hard for me when I hear that, because I have both sides of the coin. You know, I'm
Right.
like, we have nothing to complain about, you know, and I try to listen without judgment. But when you've grown up and you've seen that sacrifice up close and personal, you know, you still think about other children who may not have that present parent, and they may need the emotional support. I think you did an awesome job too. I love the emotional check-in. I don't think, and I tell you this all the time, we don't talk about the power of our emotions enough, because they're invisible. And I will never forget that I was just, you know, dealing with somebody that was completely unempathetic. They just didn't have it at all. And I said, you know what? Just think of emotions as a raw egg. There are some things that you do when you drop that raw egg, you can't put it back together. So handle it with care. And I had to start looking emotions that way too, because we may have a thicker skin with certain situations. It doesn't mean everybody else does. And then I love when you do that finger. Mama code, mama code, mama code. Lord, when we can educate each other on emotions, you are helping parents who are already, you know, and teachers, take on new responsibility in addition to existing responsibility. Not just think about the stress the adult is going through, but the emotions of that child. You know, as I was listening to Tanisha, I think I'm the more lenient parent then, and I think that's where I learned from you. In some areas, I'm lenient. In some areas, I'm more like, no, when I look long term at it. I think I'm like, what's most important to me right now? Is it you feeling excited to go to school and excited to get up and do your work? If I do that, I like how you said they can come in the middle. Okay, if you're in here, what do the rules look like?
Right.
And the first time I catch you, it's gone. I'm more that person. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? I'm like, I'm not
Mhm.
gonna, I'm gonna let you, I'm gonna give you the rope. I'm the parent that's
Mhm.
just gonna give you the rope because as soon as I come in here and see you in that bed,
Yeah.
you've lost it. I didn't take it from you. You lost it. See, I want you to get that lesson.
So one of the things when you think about that, so you could take say for instance, a ruler
Right.
and clothespins. You could cover the ruler and you could go from low to high.
Yeah.
And depending upon how things, all right, here we are. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep.
And they change. And that's one of the things that I did when I was teaching elementary school. I wouldn't change it. I make them change it.
Right. I like that. Wait, they
I
change
didn't,
it when they lose the privilege, Erica.
they change it.
Right.
Boy, they was mad. Ooh, they was
Yep.
and then they tell on everybody.
Yep.
They made me do it. So, it was one of those things that this is your consequence and you're making the decision. And even if you're dealing with a child that may be acting out, somebody may have a child. I don't want to do my homework right now.
Right.
But when we set those guardrails, we have to make sure we're consistent with the consequence. Because
Ooh.
if we start being inconsistent, you going downhill for the rest of the school year.
Yep. Yep. You
So as
telling
a
the truth.
parent, when it comes to, okay, this is this particular situation, what should the consequence be? You got this parameter. Is it going to be A or B? They choose the consequence. But we as parents have to be consistent with the consequence, because if we renege on it, they're going to take us for a joke.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good. I mean, that's great. I was listening to you and Tanisha because I'm like, it's interesting. We all have different perspectives as parents. And, I look to you and Tanisha for a lot of parenting advice on the structure because, well, Tanisha, I think she just has that motherly, she just has it. It's like a firm hand, but a big heart and the best hugs, so it's like you get all of that. But she can just look at you and you already know, okay, you're going down the wrong path. I get it. That's what I love about it. And Erica, I feel like you would be the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think it was definitely the inconsistencies, the threats of a punishment, or you get it for one day, it was supposed to be a week. Really emphasizing, my mom had said that the importance of consistency with those consequences and the structure is important. I wanted to ask you a separate question when you go to amnesty.
Mm-hmm.
But back to my first example. I think I'm more so like, I want you to be excited about where you're learning. So
Right.
and I honestly, I have been told that I'm guilty of too much talking to my kids. Like that's going to could backfire on me. But I'm more so like, okay, where do you want to be and why? Okay, great. This is my concern. If this happens, you've lost it. But if you don't, your grades, I pop in, I whatever. This is your chance to earn and build trust. Great. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is your rope. You can either do great with it or lose it. You see what I'm saying? So with that approach, it's kind of served me well so far, but I don't know if I'm setting myself up. You see what I'm saying?
Well, see, I look at it as a life skill, because when they become adults and they get ready to go out in the workforce, they're not going to have anybody to say you need to get up so you can be to work on time.
Right.
Or when they go off to college or whatever. So I think in many ways, the life skills are embedded in what it is that we're doing, that's really shaping them and helping them a lot more than what we think. because the other funny part about it is, how do you separate what happens from school as to what happens at home? Because remember, they at home. So the school experience spilling over into the home experience. How do we separate that part?
What you mean?
So when they went to school, they may have, say for instance, didn't get to go out to recess because they were at school. But when they get home, they get to come outside and play.
Right.
So now that they're in the home, when we talk about consequences for school, you don't want them to, especially if they're feeling bad about it, you don't necessarily want that to spill over throughout even the evening. Because to me, that's a longer time being in that cycle. So thinking about how the school experience is the school experience, and then we can have our family time at home to reflect on the school experience and not stay in that space, especially if they may or may not have had a negative experience. You understand what I'm saying?
Not really. Can
Okay,
you give a
so
specific example?
say for instance, they didn't necessarily finish a project. At school, they would have gotten in trouble, right?
Right.
At home, you would have sat down and talked about it.
Right.
But they're already home, so they know
Right.
so how do you give them that opportunity to feel the emotion and then let them get to a place where, okay, that was that time frame.
Right.
I don't want you to dwell on it longer than what you're supposed to. Now let's talk about it, reflect on it so it can be better.
But Erica, honestly, just being real, you're going into a whole emotional intelligence for parents, because all of that is how the parent is managing that situation. Real talk. Because the thing is, if we're stressed out or short tempered or controlling too much or whatever, or dwelling on it too long, or bringing it back up over dinner just because
Right.
it happened during lunch, it
Right.
is turning the knife. That is an
Exactly.
emotional parenting class right there. But and this is what I was gonna say. Take the parent that's outside of the home working, not with their child, that did not have any emotional support during the day. The parent stressed out, got dealing with stuff at work. Don't let them have to ride public transportation back home. That was my mom up until she was 30 years old. 2, 3 jobs and riding a bus or train back home. So you think about, and we had to ride 2 buses to get to church. Do you know how long it takes when you're on public transportation? So what you're looking at,
extra early.
and you have typically a parent that is very committed. From an adult view, you're looking very committed and hardworking and sacrificing. But from a child's perspective, it could seem like a short fuse. You see, and you never understand that from the child's perspective, the short fuse. So you take a short fuse parent right now with COVID coming home, they're working hard to provide, without emotional intelligence training or support. This is how the cycles continue, guys. And this is why I'm learning myself. Compassion and empathy is not about perfection. We're so judgmental of parents, our grandparents. We couldn't walk a mile in their shoes. I'm an adult right now, and it's stuff my children may never know. Imagine your great-great-grandmother. It's stuff you will never know that they went through and had to pick it up and keep moving. And so when we look at this from a place of compassion, empathy, and gratitude and say, hey, you know what? The sooner I forgive this for real and just try to make amends where I can and try to get the emotional training or support or whatever. It's okay to admit our flaws or challenges. And God knows that if you plan on entrepreneurship, you got to be okay with it.
Oh, you
'Cause
definitely have to. In more ways than one.
oh, you ain't going too far, because it's the best self-awareness obstacle course where you just start to embrace it and say, wow, God is sending someone to help me or to model this or to give me that nudge, but only I can go deep and do the work. So
Right.
this brings us to the root of emotional intelligence. People can order your book if they cannot afford the training. The book, what's $9.99 each?
$9.99.
It's $9.99, and I'm sure we have the audio version coming soon so people can listen with their earbuds. Right, Erica?
Yes, ma'am.
So we can. Tanisha, did you get that?
So we know what that was today.
Right. If you wasn't working on it, you are now.
You're on it now. It's on your list.
Erica, really, to be honest with you, sidebar for all the entrepreneurs in the house, is that you know, I was watching this infomercial, guys. This is for all the entrepreneurs in our community because we got a lot of them, so I'm sure they don't mind. This infomercial was telling how the sales of audiobooks have skyrocketed, and it makes sense when you think about podcasts, you think about all the mobile traveling, you know, things like that, commuting to work. But I think we get so caught up on thinking we have to do it. And yeah, it's your book, and of course you're like so close to it, but honestly, I don't have to read The Power of Peace and the Pause. If I can contract out somebody and pay them $100, $200 to read that book out loud and record it on your high quality audio equipment that you already have, and now it's available to go help hundreds, thousands, or millions of people in 3 weeks, which might have took me 3 months. We have to just kind of open our mind. And so I just wanted to share that. I wanted to bring it down. Erica, I don't know if we're going to stop, if you're near closing for this week, and we're going to pick up next week. But my second question was when you talked about amnesty. Question. When you give your child, because me and Chella sit on different pages with amnesty.
Right.
And we got a whole nother conversation. You think about co-parenting, because kids have a different set of structure at different homes. What we've tried to do is meet and come up with a joint plan so it can be as close as possible. But Chella is more so like Tanisha, here's a shared workspace. And for me, I let them choose where's your most inspiring workspace. And what does this need to look like, and what are the rules? Now, if these things are not followed, this is what the next thing will happen. So when you look at the amnesty, what do you do when your child shares something that is at the top of your punishable list, but you just granted amnesty, and you realize if they are not punished for this, this could be something that is not good. Like this is a life lesson, character building moment, because you don't want to break your word when you give your child amnesty, because they feel that's the only reason they shared it, because you created safety. But when you hear what it is that they've done, what do you do?
I think for me, because I heard some things, when my children, when we had amnesty, child, I had a headache for 2 days afterwards. And there was some stuff that blew me away. The thing about it was I offered advice as to what they were treading and why they needed to change. So
You said that to them?
yeah, so it was a situation where they shared something with me that I did not approve of. And I said, okay, understanding that, I have gratitude amnesty, but please understand that as a as your parent, but also listening to you, you need to make a decision, because the direction you're going in, this is what's going to happen if you don't make a different decision.
And you feel that that conversation is going to be just as impactful as, whatever your highest level of punishment would normally be if they were not using amnesty.
Right, because at the end of the day, punishment or not, they had to change their way of thinking of what it was that they were doing. Because if I punished them once and they went through the punishment and they still wanted to do it, they were going to do it again.
All right.
So it was about, this is the decision that, and I kind of laid out a roadmap. And I think this is why I also was transparent enough to share my story with them and say, okay, I see where you are, but let me share with you where a situation like that took me, so that you can understand that the place that you're in is not where you need to be, and you need to make a decision, because this is going to be your consequence if you don't do otherwise.
Right.
You can either take heed to it, or you can, but see, because at the moment I gave them amnesty, meaning that you won't get punished for it now. But if you continue in it, that don't mean the punishment not coming. See, at that point, you get to make a decision to turn around and do better, or you're going to keep going down that road, and there is going to be a consequence. That doesn't mean you get amnesty from it, meaning that it will never happen. At that moment, I'm giving you amnesty. I'm not going to bring it up again. We talked about it. But if you continue in it, then that's a whole nother ballgame.
Got you. Thank you so much for that awesome reminder. Thank you.
Erica.
Yes, ma'am.
Just want to share a few comments. One, Joanna was talking about her 12th grader who has a short attention span and can be very challenging as it relates to setting up workspace and helping the child to, to be able to feel comfortable and be ready to work when school starts. Did you have any suggestions as it relates to that?
Well, that goes back to what Tiara was sharing earlier. What would inspire them? What type of space that needs to be created to inspire them? Like for Rebecca, she can't be in her room because she's going to be dead asleep and no work going to get done. So I'm going to do everything I can to get that workspace outside on the porch to get prepared for her to be in that environment that's going to get her going and catch her attention. So
are you asking them, Erica? Are you asking the kids?
I'm asking
hey,
them,
what would get you excited?
What would get you excited? What would get you inspired? What would that be like?
Yeah.
And how can we work together to find those things and put them together and create it for you so that they can be excited about it, because they're genuinely excited about it when they get to this space that they've created for themselves.
Right.
They're gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna do this because they created it.
Right. See, when they do it, it's that thing. And so it's like for parents, sometimes it's a budget issue, so you can get creative.
Right.
Sometimes
Pinterest is your best friend.
Right. Pinterest and YouTube.
Yes. Yes.
The other thing too, when you think about space, like Tanisha's talking about, when there's steps and different levels to the house, and or one room is smaller or one room might be noisy. I love your suggestion of giving options. And I don't know, do you feel like parents should not have to explain, or do you think it's good when parents explain their thought process to a child?
Because they're always learning, it's always good to explain the thought process. Because remember, their perception is completely different. They're looking through a different lens. So when you help them to see through your lens, and then as parents, sometimes we got to step back and look through their lens. Because as parents, we sometimes be so high-minded because we're thinking of all these other things, and it's just not all that for them. Sometimes we have to dial it back a little bit and be like, okay, well, that's a simple thing. So I think we have to look at it both ways. It's good to explain, to elevate their thinking and their thought process, but it's also good for us to dial back a little bit and be like, oh, so that's what you want. Sometimes as parents, we overthink it.
Yeah, because it's like, does the child want alone space? Do they want privacy? Do they want a sense of independence? Do they want freedom to have all this stuff up on the wall? If we ask them why they want certain things, they're going to share it with us. It might be a way to recreate that somewhere else. It
And
might be.
sometimes it's dividing the room and just changing the room a little bit. I know for Rebecca, Lord, she changes. Pray for me. It's now changing the color of the bed. Put it in flowers now, or put it in buying her some canvas and letting her paint her own canvas picture for some color so she can express herself. And when she look at this canvas of creativity, that's going to spark some energy in her and say, wow, I created that. Let me continue to create something else.
Right. That's good. That's really, really, really good. Tanisha, you had something, T?
One, just want to say, this is really good, and y'all helping me to just reevaluate. I did tell my son earlier, I was like, sometimes you just don't have choices, but I also did share with him, like, I sometimes see things that you don't see, and this is a way for me to kind of create some boundaries for you to help you to not be, because I know him, he liked to be on the social media and all that kind of stuff, and can get easily distracted. At the same time, I hear the just suggestion of letting them choose a little bit more, and I am trying. My child is 14 now, so I'm trying to loosen those reins, but also remind that I'm still a parent. There's things that I just have a concept about that I want to be sure that you understand. I'm not just doing stuff to be mean. Like, I see things, you know what I'm saying? And so I appreciate everything that you guys are where everybody is saying out here today. And Leslie Briscoe Andrews shared that let's see, she agrees that she is preparing the kids, preparing them to take care of themselves and be contributors in society. And she also said that the responsibility of all of that can be very overwhelming to be, let's see, and she said, I feel like it's up to me to prepare my kiddo. So
and I totally agree with that, and I want to comment on what you were saying also, Tanisha. I totally agree with her, because I've always told my children and communicating them my mindset. I've always shared with them, I want you to be an asset to society and not a liability. So I'm sharing with you from the reference of, I want to make sure that when you make decisions, you don't have any regrets. I give you room to make decisions, but I also want you to see it from all sides and not just from what Tiara was talking about, not just from one frame of reference.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I used to do with my children is we would set up court. I was the judge. They were the opposing counsel, both of them. And they had to do their research and plead their case. And sometimes I would go ahead. I knew I was going to say yes, but I wanted them to do their research and plead their case. And if I said no, I had to have grounds. I couldn't just say no. I had to give reasons as to why I said no.
Hmm.
And we would have a debate. Until today, it's the same way. When my children come to me with something, they got all their research laid out, all the pros and cons already together, and then we'll sit down, reason together, and talk about it.
That's good.
And it helps to take their emotions out of it. And it doesn't feel like I'm just being the mean. Because I would find myself saying no all the time, but I never gave them the reason why. And see, when I gave them amnesty that day, that was some feedback that they gave me. Mom, you always saying no, but we don't know why.
Mm.
So when we went through that amnesty exercise, I learned a lot about me.
Mm-hmm.
That I had to take back and be like, oh Lord, gosh.
That's good. That's good.
So those are the things I have to keep before me. So that's what enhanced our conversation, because I'm expecting them to tell me why, but I should be doing the same thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
Then they have to see us self-reflect and come back and say, you know what? I prayed about it, or I thought about it, or God sent me this confirmation and I was wrong, or I changed my mind, or I see your point of view. If they don't see us do that often, then that's why we have so few adults who can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's the humility of going back to your child and saying, I apologize. I didn't understand it that way. I didn't see it that way because I was thinking something completely different.
And I see Tanisha's point, because I'm not one for leaving kids for hours by themselves, but I'm definitely not for that. And the telephones and all of that, but it's also, when you think about character building, hey, if I was in a script or role playing, it would be, hey, Bryson, you know what? Originally, I wanted you in the kitchen. I'm not telling you to do this, Tanisha. I'm just saying, thinking through it, I would be, I originally wanted you in the kitchen. And I wanted you in the kitchen because I want to see you do your best and be your best. I want to have you in a space where we can all support each other, hold each other accountable. We're not getting sleepy. We're not tempted to get off task, get on social media, and get more consequences. However, what's more important is that you are in an inspiring space. You are in high school. I want you to be excited. So here are the rules. This right here shouldn't happen. This is the rule. This is the expectation. You only get one chance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have to walk up and down the steps. I trust you. This is an opportunity for us to build trust. You can hold yourself accountable. We're not allowed on the phone. We're not allowed on social media. The first time this happens, you've lost it. I didn't take it away. You lost it. And it will be an extreme consequence. And it will be an immediate shift in space. So guess what? That's what that would look like from this example. So it's not you sugarcoating, maybe I was too strict or whatever. No, this was the reason I had it, my perspective. I'm going to give you this, and you make the choice on if this is how your school year is going to go or not.
Mm-hmm. In addition to that, you can give them 2 consequences. Now you make a decision what the consequences are, but you let them choose which one it's going to be. So say, for instance, if you told them social media time is between 11 and 12, this is during your rest break, but they decided they want to do it early. So the consequence is I take it for the rest of the week, or I put it in the lockbox for 2 days. And you don't get to even have it at night. You still set the parameters, but they chose the consequence.
Yep.
Okay.
I love it because
So you still have a simple control of what the consequence is, but you're giving them, these are your two choices. It's either going to be A or it's going to be B.
yep. And they got to be extreme because it's like I'm already going with what you want because I want you to be inspired. But as soon as you step out of this, you lose it. And it may be you immediately, the first time you're caught, you move to the kitchen for the rest of the school year. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I don't believe that person's going to risk that. I don't.
See, we have to help them to change their thought process of guardrails. Guardrails aren't bad. Guardrails keep you from falling off the cliff.
Right.
Yeah.
Guardrails are good. And when we give them the good guardrails and say, okay, we have to have a consequence to this particular situation, but these are going to be the guardrails that you have to stay within. I'm not taking your freedom from you. I'm not taking your liberty from you, but I am giving you guardrails that you have to operate in, which is forming that place of discipline. And we're very clear about what it is. So we can't be emotional and fall all the way out because we're very clear what the guardrails are. It's no surprise.
That's good.
And it may be in a situation that you may have to even draw up contracts. I've done that too. I've done contracts with my children, adults.
That's good.
So we're gonna come up with the terms and the conditions, and this is the contract, and you're gonna sign it.
That's
so this
good.
is helping them to know how to abide by their word.
Yeah. And we already see right here what the consequence is.
Black and white on, and that black and white takes the emotions out of us right here on paper. It's not just me telling you no. We're gonna draft it up, type it up. This is the situation. This is the outcome. That's the consequence.
Well, Erica, I appreciate it. I
You're so
appreciate
welcome.
it. I appreciate it, Erica. And I know you need some rest because you work today and you work tomorrow, right?
Yes, honey.
So do you want to continue next week or was it more you wanted to share tonight?
I'm good with this. I think we got another subject next week. I got to remember what it is.
Okay.
Next week is supposed to be, look, I'm looking with my glasses. Oh, yeah. Making family time memorable. That's going to be fun.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you. This was awesome. And it was divine timing. Divine timing. I mean,
yes.
We are starting a new year and we want to start off on a high as much as we can with, we're all dealing with so much change. There's always good in it, opportunity to get closer in it and learn and teach each other. So this has been really awesome and I appreciate you. I appreciate both of you guys. I appreciate it and I thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is great. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate y'all. And everyone that was on tonight with your comments and your questions, thank you so very much. And we're looking forward to chatting with you again next week.